Flexibility, convenience, opportunity. Find your digital advantage in the Keeneland Digital Sales Ring. Backed by the most trusted name in thoroughbred sales. Visit KeenelandDigital.com to learn more.
Good morning. It is 10:09 Wednesday, October 20th. This is the TDN Writers Room presented by Keeneland. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm the associate editor of the Thoroughbred Daily News. I just want to wish a happy birthday to my dad, Russ, who watches the show. Happy birthday, man. Love you.
Happy birthday to Joe's dad, Russ. This is Bill Finley, a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News. Yes, I was at Fenway Park last night. Yes, it was not a good night. Still 2-2. We're going to go to Houston. We're going to get it done. Let's go Sox.
That's all that needs to be said, Bill, about the Red Sox for today. Let's get it done, right? Jonathan Green, general manager at DJ Stable. And for those of you who don't know, we're still fostering kittens, and we try to do them in names and themes. This crop, there's 5 of them. So, Joe, we decided to name them after the top 5 New York Jets in Jets history. So one, of course, is named Namath, and the other 4 are named first round draft pick 2022, first round draft pick 2023, because there just aren't, 5 really top Jets to name these kittens, and we wanted them to be adopted.
I will not stand for this Wayne Corbett erasure. How dare you? Won't have it.
We can name them Corbett, and I mean, is there actually a like a ring of?
There's a ring of honor. They won a Super Bowl, John. There was this Super Bowl in the
Super Bowl the year I was born. That was over 50 years ago. So
the most important Super Bowl in the history of football, however, because it led to the merger. Yeah, no, not in my lifetime. There haven't been that many. I can't. I don't know. I love Vinny. Let's name a cat Vinny.
We can name a cat Vinny just because it'd be fun to have a cat named Vinny.
In Jersey.
Yo, meow. Meow. Right?
Vinny, come here. You want your breakfast?
You want your breakfast? Yeah,
we got no more? The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. The Keeneland Fall Meet continues through October 30th. New Keeneland Select accounts receive a special $100 back after you wager $200 on Keeneland Racing this fall. Wager a total of $300 in the first 30 days and earn another $100 back. Visit KeenelandSelect.com to sign up. We were waiting for this story. We touched on it about a month ago when the Breeders' Cup was deliberating. Well, it feels like that was the last time we were in the studio. I think that might be it. By the way, we're glad to have John back full time. Still waiting for a week or so for him to decontaminate, and then we'll be back in the studio most likely. The Breeders' Cup was deliberating on whether or not to allow Bob Baffert's horses to run in the Breeders' Cup. We obviously thought that they were going to allow him to because it was just too short notice, and there wasn't really any specific statute or any kind of written rule to keep him out of it. So basically the decision that they came to was, they're going to let Bob Baffert's horses run, but they're going to subject them to extra scrutiny, extra drug testing. So the long statement, but it says, just based on the totality of the circumstances, Breeders' Cup has decided to require all horses trained by Mr. Baffert to undergo enhanced out-of-competition, pre- and post-race testing, and other security protocols at his own expense in order to participate in the 2021 Breeders' Cup World Championships at Del Mar. I think this is the right call. I think this is probably the best that they could have done on such short notice to pacify the public who wants Bob Baffert to be, scrutinized and kind of pay some kind of price for what's happened in the past year with his 5 very high profile drug positives. But my only real takeaway from this is that this is why we need HISA, I think. This is yet another reason why we need this, USADA to come in and, take control of our drug policy, because this is like, they're just like kind of making this up out of thin air. This policy, the Breeders' Cup is creating this entirely new policy for this one guy. And there's just, I don't know. It seems like they're grasping here at just like, oh, well, here's how we, here's how we make both sides happy. Here's how we make the Baffert supporters and Bob Baffert's owners happy. By the way, there are some Baffert owners on the board of directors. So there's, an inherent conflict of interest here, which is yet another reason why these organizations should not be making these policies for these major events. But beside that, I just think that, it shouldn't be up to the Breeders' Cup board of directors or individual tracks or individual jurisdictions to try to come up with, a meaningful drug policy. There should be a uniform standard across the board, because it kind of looks, it looks like a joke. It looks like, again, Mickey Mouse stuff to have the Breeders' Cup coming out 6 weeks before, or not even, like 3 or 4 weeks before the event, with this, brand new drug policy just for Bob Baffert, with no written rule on the books to base it off of. So that to me is my issue. I don't disagree necessarily with the policy. I just think that this is yet another example of why we need someone to take this out of our hands as a sport.
Yeah, Joe, I agree with everything that you said there. But the bottom line is they got this right. There's no way they could have kept him from running in the Breeders' Cup, especially at this late date. Maybe if they had done something way back in May, we'd be talking about a different story. And then, so that they're going to let him run, and they're going to, put him under the microscope the whole time. And if you remember, this is essentially the exact same thing that the Stronach Group did for the Preakness after the Medina Spirit positive came out for the Kentucky Derby. A couple other things too, and I don't know, I'd have to go back and do a deep dive, but I think most of the things that they're doing for Baffert without a competition testing and security, I'm not sure that's anything all that new. I think they do that for most horses. The Breeders' Cup, has always been, very diligent about, real tight security for the horses. I know out of competition testing happens all the time. And then the other point you brought up, and I agree that, Heise would fix this, but even though I agree with the decision, the conflicts of interest here were just terrible. And, I don't know what you do about that. Prominent owners in the Breeders' Cup on the Breeders' Cup board are going to have horses trained by somebody like Bob Baffert. But, that's something that everybody should look at down the road. Is there a better way of doing this? Perhaps. But for now, they got it right.
You guys, basically took my two major points, which was number one, it's an inherent conflict of interest. It's not even like close. Over 50% of the decision makers in this ruling have direct business associations with Bob Baffert. If that's not a conflict of interest, then I don't know what is. That being said, should they have immediately removed themselves from the situation and say, hey, I have to abstain. I can't vote on this because of my inherent business relationship with Bob Baffert? Yes, that should have been done. But honestly, that would have left like a handful of people to make this decision, as far as whether or not it should be done. And even if they recuse themselves from the decision making, that there's still pressure on the other people who are on the board. It's basically like saying, hey, I'm not going to vote on this name, contest that we have coming up. But by the way, it would really be cool if we named the horse XYZ. Now, Bill wouldn't give a crap, but Joe, I think, would listen and be like, hey, John really maybe I should think about it. Maybe I should move this name up from third to second, because we all work together and there's the camaraderie and there's just this inherent, trying to get things done. So the fact that there's such a blatant conflict of interest, blew my mind as far as this decision making. Bill, you're 100% right that from a legal standpoint, they really couldn't do anything else other than what they put out there. Because if they made the scrutiny too deliberate, then Baffert's attorneys would come back and say, this is unfair and unjust, and it would get kicked down the road. And basically his horses would run in the Breeders' Cup anyway. And if they made it too loose, then it would be like, well, wait a second, how come all the other people who didn't break the rules in other jurisdictions have to abide by the Breeders' Cup rules? I can tell you, as an owner who has run horses in the Breeders' Cup and has a horse in one of the races for the upcoming Breeders' Cup, in a couple of weeks, there is no difference, not one iota of difference of what my horses have to test and go through and what the Baffert barn has to go through. The only thing that is separate isn't the rulemaking or isn't the testing pre or post or anything like that. It's that, Baffert or Baffert's owners technically have to foot the bill for the scrutiny and the security. Whereas, my horses are, all the testing and all the security is all taken care of by the Breeders' Cup organization. Baffert's owners have to do it. Otherwise, there is not one difference. Joe, I think you used the right word. It's a joke. There's not one bit of difference in the rulemaking and the scrutiny between what my horses have to go through and what Baffert's horses have to go through.
And the other thing I would add is that, this, I think, should be the standard for every race, for every track, for every trainer. There should be out of competition testing. There should be, not to the trainer's expense, but this is, I just hate the idea that, we're going above and beyond and we're doing out of competition testing for Bob Baffert's horses for the Breeders' Cup. Like, why is that not the standard across the country? And it is because we don't have a uniform drug policy. We don't have HISA or something similar to make everything uniform and to have, the drug enforcement taken out of our hands. We just are making it up as we go along. And it looks so bad. Like I said, in the individual decision from the Breeders' Cup, I can't really complain about it. It is what it is. I think they did what they could on such short notice, but, just the process stinks to high heaven for this and for so many, decisions and so many deliberations across the country when it comes to, punishing or penalizing trainers who've had drug positives. It just stinks because there's so many conflicts of interest and there's no uniform rule on the books for this kind of stuff. So, like we were saying last week, we've had enough of the Baffert stuff. This whole year has been the year of Bob Baffert and legal actions. And, it's really tiresome, but, I think this was the best of a bunch of crappy options for the Breeders' Cup to still let his horses run and not open them up to legal challenges, but yet make it look like they were doing something special to keep, Bob Baffert's horses clean. It just, this is the best they could do, I guess. And that's unfortunate.
And Joe, the one other thing that I failed to mention is I don't think the Breeders' Cup wants to be in this. I don't think they want to be in this kind of morass and decision making, even down to like in their press release. The last sentence of the press release was Breeders' Cup looks forward to the uniform rules and enforcement mechanisms that the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority Anti-Doping and Medication Control Program will bring to our sport. Basically, like, we don't want to deal with this nonsense. We just want to have the show and have the races and enjoy it and have the party. We don't want to be in the rules and regulations and medication, decision making when it comes to all this. Please, somebody else come in and take this off our plate. So I think even they recognized that they were like out of their depths.
Yeah, I mean, nor should they be. That's the whole point, is that This should not fall to the Breeders' Cup in the first place. But once it does, there's certainly some bad looks involved here. TDN Writers Room was brought to you by Keeneland. Racing continues this week at Keeneland with the Grade 3 Sycamore Stakes on Friday and the Grade 2 Lexus Raven Run for 3-year-old fillies on Saturday. Also the Grade 3 Rudin Riddle Dowager Stakes on Sunday for marathoners. Keeneland November sale just a few weeks away as well, starting with Book 1 on November 10th and continuing through November 19th. New for 2021, Keeneland will offer a single session dedicated to racehorses on the final day of the sale. You see John with the catalog right there. That's not just a prop. He's actually looking through it. And also just a couple updates on some of this. John's skimming face. Just a couple updates on some horses pointing to the November sale. Pink Peppermint, who's a half sister to this weekend's Grade 2 Sands Point winner Fluffy Socks, will sell his hip 2644 with Mill Ridge Farm. And Alexandra's full brother Prince Alexander just became her second stakes place sibling. Grade 1 winner Alexandra, remember her beating the boys in the Jaipur. She sells In Full to Into Mischief as hip 187 with Blue Water sales. Definitely looking forward to her going through the ring, as well as a ton of top class race mares as well. So looking forward to that and the rest of the Keeneland meet as well. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
Wins by 6 on debut with the promise of bigger things to come. Justify, he's on a dizzying ascent to greatness.
What do you do when the experts compare you to legends?
Justify has won the Kentucky Derby. He's unstoppable. He won the Preakness. Justify is the 13th Triple Crown winner.
You justify it.
The TDN Writers Room was brought to you by Coolmore. We're going to talk to Adrian Wallace, who does nomination sales, a little bit later about a bunch of this, but Coolmore released their stud fees on Tuesday with Uncle Mo at the top of the roster at $160,000, which is down slightly from $175,000. Obviously still in high demand. Triple Crown winners Justify will stand for $100,000 and American Pharaoh for $80,000. And with Jack Christopher expected as the favorite for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, Munning saw a big jump from $40,000 to $85,000. So over twice of his 2020 stud fee. Obviously, Munning still in very high demand. Coolmore sires were represented by several stakes winners over their weekend, with Panfield, a champion in Hong Kong by Looking at Lucky, one of John's favorite sires, adding another Group 2 win to his resume, plus Juvenile Cook Creek winning the Rocky Run Stakes at Delaware Park for Uncle Mo. An important recent maiden winners overseas for a few of Ashford's first crop sires. More Vincent Omnia became the 21st winner for first crop sire Caravaggio at Haydock last Friday, and he currently leads his class by winners. Another top first crop sire, Practical Joke, saw his first winner in Japan with Dugit's 4-length winning debut. Just to kind of piggyback off the last segment, yet another reason why we need a unifying body in racing to police these things. This was a big story earlier this week. The Delaware Park stewards have suspended, fined an owner, trainer, and assistant trainer for improper or inhumane treatment of a horse diagnosed last spring with a 50% tendon tear. Basically, the veterinarian at Delaware diagnosed this horse with a tendon tear and said that the horse needed 8 to 12 months off. The horse is named Food and Wine. Basically, the horse was then drugged in order to mask that lameness and brought back on the track much earlier than the veterinarian suggested. And the veterinarian, to their credit, reported this to the Delaware stewards and the Delaware Racing Commission. And, I guess this is the system sort of working because there was a punishment of some kind. And I'm sure this stuff happens more often than we want to admit across the country with basically no repercussions. But the suspensions and the fines were so minimal. And the owner got a $2,500 suspension and suspended 30 days. The trainer, same thing, $2,500, 30 days. The assistant trainer was fined $1,000 and suspended 15 days. I don't know what the Delaware Racing Commission, the Delaware stewards can legally do, but this seems like the kind of thing that should get people banned for life from that track and from that state. I feel free to educate me on what they're legally able to do, but I don't understand how this kind of thing gets this little of a suspension and a fine. This is everything that is wrong with racing right now. And it's yet another example of something that happens on a smaller track that we are very lucky does not get reported in the national news, because this would be a 5-alarm fire type story if it were actually reported nationwide. It's I guess fortunately something that we are only talking about on the show and some other people are talking about. But this is the kind of stuff that is emblematic of a broken system where the welfare of the horse is so often not the top priority as it should be. The suspensions and fines were a joke. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Joe, the welfare of the horse has to come first in every single situation. And if you're an owner trainer in this sport and you don't believe that or you don't abide by that rule, I totally agree. There's no place for you in this sport whatsoever. So yes, they should have given them stricter suspensions, and it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth, this sort of thing. The thing, too, is this was a little bit, to me, the gang that couldn't shoot straight. How on earth did they think they were going to get away with this? Horse had a bowed tendon. The vet said he needed 8 to 12 months off, and all of a sudden they give the horse presumably some sort of painkiller and have it out working in the morning. Who's not going to notice that sort of thing? So, that they deserve to get caught. They deserve to be suspended. They deserve a stricter suspension. But it's in general. And, it's amazing we even are talking about this. How are there people in this game that still don't put the priority in the health and well-being of the horse first? But there are. And, these are the type of people that have no business being involved in this sport.
And Bill, you mentioned it, just now, as far as how do they think they're going to get away with it? Number one. Number two, why? why do this? There are so many other options as far as, donating a horse to a nonprofit to repurpose it. I mean, they'll do all the heavy lifting. They'll be the ones who will rehab the horse for 8 to 12 months to make sure that the tendon heals better, so the horse could be repurposed and go on with a different part of its career for the remainder of its life. So, like, why? If the end game was to get it off the vets list, then they were going to run it for what, $5,000, and hope it got claimed after being on the vets list. It just didn't. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that why they would even try to get away with it. Not that I condone people of any stretch, giving a horse any kind of performance enhancing drugs and run it in a stake race where you say, well, if they won, they would be hundreds, if not millions of dollars if they got it right. It doesn't matter. I mean, but why even try to do the crime at that level, where even if the horse jumped through all the hoops and everything and didn't get hurt worse, that it would, where would it be at this point? And I don't think that we even touched on this because we had so much news coming through over the summer and the fall. But wasn't Delaware Park the place where that trainer, went after one of her horses with a pitchfork because it wasn't, acting properly? And the powers that be on the board at Delaware said, well, I believe that this trainer, and I'll use her name because it's in the news, it was Amber Cobb. I believe that Amber Cobb was the most articulate trainer that we've ever had in front of the board. It was almost like they were swooning over her, as far as like, oh, she spoke so intelligently compared to the other people who were talking, against her, where they couldn't, put together a sentence to basically save their lives. And therefore, we don't condone this kind of action of, pitchforking a horse, but she was just so articulate. Our breaths were taken away. We couldn't, give her, we had to reduce, the penalty for her because she was just so gosh darn articulate. You talk about the gang that couldn't shoot straight, Bill. I wasn't sure if you were talking about the owner trainer and his wife, who's the assistant trainer, or the powers that be at Delaware Park.
Yeah, well, listen, anybody that's followed and bet Delaware Park over the years, I used to call it the land of make-believe, because you would get trainers like Jamie Ness who would come there and win, 30%, and then they would ship those horses up to Saratoga and they wouldn't run a step. And that told you all you needed to know about what was going on at Delaware Park. Like I said, the land of make-believe, where trainers can win at any percentage and nobody bats an eye. Yeah, well, I agree with both of your points that, why do this? It reminds me of the story we talked about a little while ago, where the guy brought the horse off the 5-year layoff to run in a bottom level maiden claimer. Like, why would you not just donate the horse or try to find a new home for the horse? Like, you're really going to go to all this trouble and all this effort to squeeze a couple of dollars out of a horse at an injured horse or an old horse? Like, it makes absolutely no sense. And yeah, Delaware has a lot to answer for in the last couple of months, but unfortunately, this is what happens when people aren't looking. And then, in general, people are not looking at some of these lower level tracks in Delaware and West Virginia and Arizona. There was a story last week about Turf Paradise having all these racetrack concerns, and whether or not they're going to have a meet and be able to conduct racing safely. It's just, there are very few people watching at these smaller tracks, and there's just so many shenanigans that happen that, put horses in danger. And it's, I think that racing is doing a better job at the higher levels, at least, of policing things and, making racetracks safer and increasing veterinary transparency and all this stuff that we should have been doing for decades, honestly. But at least it's happening at the upper levels of the game now. Still at the bottom levels, there's so much of this crap and so much of this garbage. It just makes you exhausted. To have to talk about this and continue to defend this sport all the time. It's just, I don't like. Again, there's no defense for any of this stuff. There's absolutely no defense for it. And yet here we are every week trying to be advocates for the sport. And this stuff pops up and it's like, it feels like a lost cause. I know it's not. And I know that, help is on the way, hopefully in the future. And, we can put the finishing touches on the kind of general, thrust of reform and the feeling of kind of the come to Jesus moment I think racing had in the last couple of years that has spurred some good things and some good reforms. But this stuff still exists, and it exists more than I think a lot of people in racing want to admit. And there's no excuse for it. And it has to be cleaned up, but it's not going to be unless people are ruled off the grounds for good. These suspensions and fines are not going to do it. And we've seen that time and time again with cheating trainers, and we'll see it again with animal abusers. It's just, unless they get banned for life, unless there's that specter of never being able to be on a racetrack again, it's just going to keep happening, unfortunately. So we're welcoming a new sponsor this week, another new sponsor that's near and dear to my heart as a New York bred, the New York Thoroughbred Breeders. And we're super excited to have them. It's obviously a great program. We've seen over the past 10 years, especially, that New York breds can run anywhere in the world and compete at the top levels. And that's definitely a credit to people at the NYTB, because that wasn't always the case. There was a time when, I did a story on this a couple of years ago when I was up at Saratoga. There was a time where New York bred full crops were declining pretty steadily, but the incentive programs and the great racing purse structure that they have has really bumped that back up. And it's once again a program on the rise. So we're honored to have the New York Thoroughbred Breeders on as a sponsor. And it's good timing, because the Facing-Tipton Saratoga Fall Mixed Sale returned this past Monday after a 1-year hiatus in 2020 due to COVID. The sale came back with positive results and saw the most expensive horse through its ring in its 8-year history, a New York bred weanling filly by Catalina Cruiser that sold to Reeves Thoroughbred Racing, Dean and Patty Reeves, for $195,000. And New York-based sires were also represented and led by a $100,000 colt by leading New York sire Freud. Freud is a hard knocker, man. He is still out here producing nice horses, especially on the turf. Very, very admirable sire. And an exciting New York bred son of Candy Rye got his second stakes win on Monday. Senbei, who we saw win the funny side at Saratoga over the summer, when the New York Breeders' Feature already at Finger Lakes by 4 lengths for Christophe Clement, and owners Reeves Thoroughbred Racing, just mentioned them, and Darlene Bielinski, a 2-year-old, was bred by Dr. Jerry Bielinski and folded his Waldorf farm. Looks to have an exciting future. And I know they have some new breeding announcements that John knows a little bit about as well.
Well, what's great about the New York program is, they make it very simple. And as a breeder who is out of state, I appreciate that. So we actually have 2 resident mares that live in New York year round and are bred to New York stallions. And obviously they get the benefits of being able to run in New York bred races going forward, which, for most of the year in New York, the maiden special weight races for New York breds are $80,000, $90,000, $100,000. And the AO then is just as much. So, you have a chance if you win, the maiden special weight race against New York breds and the A other then against New York breds, you have a chance to make $100,000 to $120,000 right off the bat. So that's with only winning 2 races, which is great. And then they've also, over the past couple of years, have included something, with regard to the sales. So which we obviously have a lot of breeding stock sales coming up, where if you buy a mare for $50,000 or more at public auction and bring it to New York, that foal can be considered a New York bred, regardless of if it's by a New York or, by a New York stallion or not. So they're making it very simple to bring in higher priced mares to foal out in New York to get that New York bred. And case in point, Joe, I don't even know if I mentioned this before, but we actually bought a Constitution New York bred at the Saratoga sale because it was a New York bred. And I mean, he was gorgeous. And we actually, we kept calling him the man. He's the man. He's the man because he looked so outstanding compared to, a couple of the rest of the horses that were on that list. And to have a Constitution New York bred colt, I mean, it blew our minds that we were able to kind of pair those 2 together. So kudos to New York breeding program for making the rules simple for guys like me to understand. And also another great idea, being here on the show and being a sponsor.
Yeah. And, John is definitely invested in the New York bred program. I'm not personally financially invested, but I'm invested in seeing New York breds do well. Like I said, as a New York bred myself, I'm a big supporter of New York racing. And it's just great, like I said, to have seen the resurgence of that program in the last 10, 15 years or so. They're doing a lot of things right. And we're very happy and honored to have them on the show as a sponsor. And we'll be right back after this message from the New York Thoroughbred Breeders.
Now more than ever, it's time to get with the program because New York breds start with an advantage. New York Breds run for Sirius Green at Belmont and Saratoga. New York Bred Maidens run for up to $75,000 and allowance horses for up to $85,000. And serious New York Bred owners can collect awards of up to $20,000 per horse per race in open company. So get back with the program. Seriously.
So this is the final week. We are wrapping up our super popular Honor Code / Lane's End Name the Colt contest. We have our last 3 finalists. Oh, and we have a special guest sitting in as well, Bill Farish from Lane's End. Thanks for coming on, Bill.
Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you. Glad that you guys sponsored this. It's been, it's exceeded all of our expectations how popular this has been. People want to name horses and they like the show, I think. So we thank you guys for sponsoring it. We have our final 3 selections, just in case you're tuning in for the first time. The way we did it is Bill, John, and I each picked, Bill Finley, John, and I each picked a finalist each week for 3 weeks. This is that 3rd week. And then our producer, Patty, added a name for the 10th name, put them all together. We voted and we have a winner. But first, let's get to our finalists for this week. So my finalists this week, and I swear I'm not trying to do this, Skip, but yet again, I picked a Skip Anderson name this week. I really like this one. It's Lenegade, in honor of John Green's father and the Green Group founder, Len Green. Lenegade, really like that name. So that's my finalist for this week. Toss it over to you, Bill Finley.
Yeah, Sean Cronin submitted Knowing Me New. Excuse me, this is a mouthful. Knowing Me No New. That was what I went for.
It's an ABBA reference, right? Is it an ABBA reference? Didn't Patty say that?
Definitely an ABBA reference. Let me help you with pop culture there, Bill.
The voice of God. Appreciate that.
It's definitely, yeah. Bill Finley, back in the 70s, there was a band called ABBA. I don't know if you were probably 40 or 50 years old when that was going on. But yeah, they were a cool band for a while there. So it's a great reference. And then the Skip Anderson show continues because he came up with another great name that I selected, unknowing that it was Skip. And the name was Ice Code Beer, which I thought was very, very funny. And it was great that we got to use, Honor Code's name in the text of Ice Code Beer. So Skip, thank you for I think we got over 300 name selections and requests, and then Skip threw in another 100 on top of that, and so it was a very, very popular contest. And I think it was great because Bill Farish, I think when we had you on the show a few months ago, we asked you the question of which stallion on your farm is undervalued the most. And you said Honor Code. And that actually prompted us from DJ Stable to go ahead and look at more Honor Codes, which is how we ended up picking up this colt. So there is a direct response to what you say on the air and how it benefits, your stallions and hopefully our program as well.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. That's the right bump. Yeah. And so Patty had our final finalist, which was Honor Ricky. So the mix of Honor Code and Nikki New. So those are the 10 finalists. We're splashing them up on the screen, all 10 of them. So we got 4 finalists from Skip Anderson, who's our number 1 fan at the show and is a sheep farmer. Let's see some pictures of his beautiful sheep, his herd of sheep. Skip is a great guy and he always participates in whatever we got going on. So it was no surprise. Everybody who picked a finalist, you don't go home empty-handed. Each of the 10 finalist submissions get an Honor Code hat presented by Lane's End. So Skip gets 4 of those. He doesn't have 4 heads, but he's gonna have to rotate day after day. So that's a good prize for everybody who submitted. And I just want to thank everybody who submitted a name as well. We got so much feedback and so many submissions, and we really appreciate it. It makes us feel good, and I'm sure it makes the folks at Lane's End feel good that you guys are so invested in this Honor Code colt who is going to be on the track next year for DJ Stable. And before we get to the winner, we have Bill Farish on. Let's get his opinion on what name he would have picked.
I like Whistleblower the best.
That was one of our first finalists from Bill. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
It did make a finalist. Good.
Yeah,
I like one word names like that, and it's got good relevance with Honor Code. So I like Whistleblower.
Cool. So Bill did not get an official vote, despite being the big cheese at Lane's End, who's sponsoring the contest, did not get an official vote.
No, but I have another honor code called You Can Help Me Name.
Let's do it again.
That's right.
We'll do it 2.0. I mean, people love this. So yeah, everybody gets a hat that got a finalist, and congratulations to Skip for sending in 4. So are we ready? Are we ready to reveal the winner? And we've already submitted this to the Jockey Club, by the way, and they already approved it. So this is the name. Drum roll, please. We get the editing team to pipe in a drum roll, because I can't really do it here where I'm sitting. The winner is Stay on Her Good Side, Skip Anderson, my dude. And I think, this was my first finalist that I picked. We got a lot of votes. We went in a room. We all, went in the conclave, and then the white smoke came out of the top of the church, and we finally decided on a name. Stay on Her Good Side, I thought was very clever, because obviously it incorporates the honor code name, and then as well as kind of the Nikki knew, what did Nikki know part of it. So John, it's your horse. What do you think?
Now, I'm really pleased not only with the responses that we've received, but also that, this is such a classy name. And that's always a concern when we send things out to the general masses of what are you going to come back with? And I was really, really pleased that Stay on Her Good Side, was selected. I know that he will definitely run up to that name, and it'll be, plastered all over a lot of winner circle pictures and a lot of trophies coming up. He is an Ontario bred, so he will, likely go up to Woodbine and hopefully be king and continue on with Mark Cassie's program of winning the Cup and Saucer and some of the great handicap and some of the other really great 2-year-old stake races that are coming up, and hopefully the Breeders' Cup. So hopefully not only will we have Lane's End Honor Code hats, but we'll hopefully have Breeders' Cup Stay on Her Good Side hats as well. And Bill Farish, I can't thank you enough for willingness to be involved with this contest, and really, Honor Code genuinely in our estimation is one of the most undervalued horses that's out there. And I know you guys have an announcement coming up with stud fees for 2022, and I really hope that he stays in that lane of the $15,000 to $20,000 stud fees, despite the fact he's got Max Player and Maracuja and Feel the Fear and a lot of other horses that are going out to California for the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, he really, he's sitting there at the top of the third crop sire list for Grade 1 winners. He's tied with Liam's Map at the moment with 3 Grade 1 winners. He's got two real shots at the Breeders' Cup, we think. And he really is doing very well. And for whatever reason, he's stays undervalued and underrated. And but that's okay. He'll grind it out, and we're excited to have Honor AP here, who of course is the only 3-year-old colt to beat Authentic last year or year before last. So I think he's got a lot going for him, and we appreciate you doing this which could, because it obviously helps promote Honor Code as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a good partnership, and we thank you guys for coming on. Listen, you don't have too many chances to get into the AP Indy family. One of the last great champion sons of AP Indy. So, I think he should be a very popular sire. And obviously Max Player has a big shot in the Classic as well. So that can't hurt. And we definitely hope that we drummed up some interest for him. This is a great idea. John, we appreciate you participating and bringing the horse up and letting the audience name them. And Bill Farish and everybody at Lane's End, we also thank you as well. So without further ado, we'll be right back after this message from Honor Code and Lane's End.
Honor Code, a multiple Grade 1 winner from the final crop of the legendary AP Indy. Never off the board in 11 starts, he was crowned champion older horse before retiring. Now he is living up to the promise of his pedigree, with progeny like Grade 1 winners Honor AP, Max Player, and Maracuja, and multiple 6-figure yearling sales. Honor Code stands to continue his sire's legacy at Lane's End.
The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by The Green Group, an accounting, tax, consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. With over 500 clients in the horse business, they have proven strategies to save you taxes. Learn more about how they can help you at www.greenco.com. So we're thrilled to bring on this week the guy who does nomination sales at Coolmore. We're very grateful for the new sponsorship. Adrian Wallace, new dad as well, or third kid.
Very good. Yep. Penelope Jane arrived last Thursday on time, as I said before, unlike both her parents, who are notoriously late for pretty much everything they do. But she arrived, she's healthy and well, and touch wood, it's very early days, but we're getting through the nights okay. And all good.
And we appreciate you making time to come on with us. We're probably splashing up a photo of a very cute baby right now. That's what the fans love. That's what they tune in for. But yeah, so Adrian, lots to talk about as always at Coolmore. But I wanted to start with your background and how you got started in racing. I detect a little bit of an accent, I assume. You got your schooling in Ireland, but can you tell us about your background in racing and how you ended up at Coolmore?
Yeah, so my family owns a small stud farm in Tipperary in Ireland called Green Ann House Stud. The farm was run by my parents. My dad is a doctor, and my mum, the farm came from her side of the family. And so she bred and raced horses, mostly jumps horses. And we grew up showing, always had a love of horses, showing horses and hunting horses. And my brother Mark used to be assistant trainer for Aidan O'Brien back when he took over Ballydoyle from Vincent. So he spent a couple of years there before moving on to John Ox and then to Mick Channon in England. And then he went out on his own as a trainer in Newmarket, trained a good sprinter called Ben Vaughan, who won the Prix de l'Abbé. And then he moved to France to train, or not to France, but to Australia to train for a few years. And packed it in about 6 years ago, moved back to Tipperary, and he's managing the farm for us and does a great job. We actually bred a filly called Mother Earth this year, who won the 1,000 guineas in Newmarket for Mr. Magner, Tabor and Smith. So that was a nice story to it. So hopefully we'll see her in a couple of weeks in the Breeders' Cup.
Hey, Adrian, thanks for joining us. It's Bill Finley here. We got you at a good time because Coolmore released all its stud fees for 2022. A lot to talk about here, but I think the one that I was most surprised was a reduction in the stud fee for American Pharoah from 100,000 to 80,000. I mean, obviously he's a good sire, has gotten off to a good start. Could you take us through the decision and why the reduction in the stud fee there?
We thought that, listen, he's doing very, very well. He's had 3 Grade 1 winners. He's very much perceived as an international sire now. I think he's probably one dirt horse away, or one good dirt horse away, from keeping him really current in this market. He covered 200 mares last year, so he still remains very popular. I think I was just looking down the sales results early this morning, and he had still at 17 yearlings bring over 200,000 at the sales in Keeneland. So he remains very, very relevant. But we thought, listen, until he gets that Group 1 winner on dirt, really in this country, people are starting to perceive him maybe as a bit of a turf star. So we just thought to keep him relevant, to keep him in the spotlight, we had to drop him a little bit. And we think he'll do that. I mean, he's had Group 1 winners in the USA. He had a European champion 2-year-old last year in Van Gogh in Europe. He's had a Group 1 winner in Japan. Fillies like Merneath and Harvey's Little Goyle over here are continuing to have flown the flag for him this year, along with their own as time goes by, who's a dual Group 2 winner and Grade 1 place down in California. But we realized that he needs to do it on the dirt as well. So I think that was our main reason for dropping him a little bit.
Yeah, and Adrian, thank you so much for coming on. And this is perfect timing because obviously, again, you just announced the 2022 stud fees coming out. And Bill mentioned, American Pharoah, who I think is great value now at $80,000. And a couple of the other stallions that I had highlighted as a breeder that I wanted to circle back on. One is looking at Lucky, who I think, dollar for dollar is one of the most consistent stallions here in the States. He throws runners. And I know when you're trying to make your mare, you need to have good first, second falls. And he's one that we've used time and time again. I was glad to see that he's at 15,000. And then for the past couple of weeks, I've been, on the Mendelssohn bandwagon, telling everyone who would listen, from the July sale to the September sale to even when we just got back from Goff's, just how outstanding the Mendelssohns look. And you guys obviously must see that as well, because here's a sire that is entering, kind of a critical point in time before the horses start to run. And yet you didn't have to reduce his stud fee because I'm assuming that there's such international interest in the horse.
There is. I mean, if any, we're very privileged and lucky to have a strong group of stallions from Justify, Pharaoh, and Uncle Mo on down to the young unproven horses like Cupid and Motown. But in between there, you've got a horse like, as you say, like Mendelssohn, who, yes, is on the verge of having his first runners next year, so is obviously unproven. But is there a better horse in America in terms of the ingredients that go in to make a stallion? He's by a sire of sires who was taken too early from us in Scat Daddy. He's a brother to Beholder and Into Mischief, as obviously is well documented. And he's also received, and being a $3 million yearling, he's obviously a very, very good looking horse. Couple that with being a Breeders' Cup winner and a runaway winner of the UA Derby winner, and also running well in races like the Travers over here while being trained in Ireland. That's obviously, it shows his durability and his ability as a racehorse. So I think he's got those ingredients, which are obviously very important in having a successful sire. And then he's been very popular in his first 3 years at Stud, and will be, I'm sure, in his fourth. So we felt that last year he covered close to 200 mares again. He's been very, very popular throughout in his first 3 years. We think he'll be popular again, given how well received his yearlings were. So we felt it was necessary to keep his price solid at that. We didn't want to raise him. I think we could have raised him probably because of the demand, how high demand has been in the last few years. But we felt that, we don't like raising the stud fee in the fourth year. It just seems a little bit
wanted to ask about
nothing to do.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Adrian. I wanted to ask about Caravaggio, because he's a horse that I think has taken off in Europe, but we haven't really seen much of his progeny here in the U.S. He's now come over to the U.S. and is standing at Ashford in Kentucky. Can you talk a little bit about why you guys decided to bring him over to the U.S. at this point? I mean, obviously he's a son of Scat Daddy. There aren't too many stallion sons of Scat Daddy left, and Justify, you guys have another one. We remember him winning the Commonwealth Cup so brilliantly at Ascot. Can you talk about the decision to bring him over?
Well, I mean, not many people may know this, but Caravaggio was actually born here. He was bred by our director of sales, Charlie O'Connor, and his father-in-law, Rick Imbert. So they used to own the dam Mecca Octaves by Holy Bull. So he was born here, had his lived here until he was bought privately by Mr. Magner and partners Tabor and Smith to go to Ballydoyle. So he lived here, and he was a horse that obviously dual graded winner at Royal Ascot as a 2-year-old, and again as a 3-year-old winning the Commonwealth. Very, very good sprinter, and a horse that we wanted to have back here pretty much from the moment we heard he was going to retire. We didn't get him the first year, we didn't get him the second year. Luckily, we got him in the fourth year. So we begged to have him, and I think when you look at him, he's very much an American type of horse. He's very well built. He's very broad across his chest. He's got a great forearm, a great gaskin on him. He looks fast. He looks like he should have been a dirt horse rather than a turf sprinter. And certainly, he's off to a flying start in Europe where the majority of his first runners have been. Tenebrism obviously was his first winner for us for Ballydoyle and Aidan O'Brien early in the year, and she came back 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago and won the Cheveley Park at Newmarket, which is like winning the Al-Shabaitis here at Keeneland. It's an emblematic 2-year-old fillies race at the end of the season, and so to do that is very, very important. He's also been represented here by Wesley Ward's Her World, who won a stakes race on her debut in Monmouth. So he's had some exposure over here with his early runners, but obviously the flag will be flown in Europe for the coming years. But I think he's a horse that, he bred 170 mares here in his first crop, or his first book of mares. He was very popular. American breeders like him physically. So I think, he's a horse with a lot to offer.
Adrian, reading up a little bit about your background, you when Joe asked you a question earlier, you gave us some thoughts on that. But I read that one of the reasons why you wanted to come work in America was your love affair with Cigar. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, very interesting. You say there were two horses really. Cigar was one of them, and Thunder Gulch was the other. I went to a school called Glenstall Abbey School in Ireland, which is a Benedictine monastery, and MV, JP, and Tom Magner also went there. So I was good friends with them from an early age. And when I was leaving school, I wasn't really 100% sure what I wanted to do. So they encouraged me to come over here. I came here for a year. And at that time, I came here in 2001 and was just, I think Cigar was finishing up his racing career in 97, 98, if I'm not mistaken. And he was on his wonderful run of 18 races undefeated for Bill Mott. And I just remember him winning under the lights. You know, obviously a lot of these emblematic American races like the Breeders' Cup and a lot of these grade ones happen at night in Europe. So, you know, I was got accustomed to staying up late following this horse around the country and taking his track everywhere he came. I remember vividly watching Thunder Gulch also winning the 1995 Kentucky Derby. So it was just a love of American racing and the horses. Generally watching these races with my you know, my friends or my family late at night, just always sort of had American racing had a sort of romanticism for me. So that's really what drew me to America. And I came for a year, and 20 years later, I'm still here.
And we're appreciative that you are still here.
As am I.
One more question for you about you know, some of the stud fees and stallions that are over at the farm. Munnings, who, you know, in racing circles, everyone knows of Munnings. They know he throws a wonderfully, you know, good looking horse. His sales averages are 2.5 times what his stud fee is. And now he's taken that extra leap into the stratosphere of getting horses that are, you know, Breeders' Cup, you know, worthy and Derby and Oaks worthiness. Walk us through the process of taking a stallion like Munnings, who has a great following. He was standing for $40,000, 50, 60 even last year, and now to make the leap to $85,000.
He's a very interesting horse, and he's actually a horse that, if you study how his stallion career has evolved, he's really, really done it the hard way. I mean, he was introduced. Obviously, we bought him at the 2-year-old sales. He was a high-priced juvenile down in Florida. 1.4 million, I believe, was what he cost as a 2-year-old. 3-time Grade 2 winner for Michael Tabor and Todd Fletcher. Grade 1 place in the Hopeful as a 2-year-old. So obviously he had speed, he had precocity, but he retired without winning the all-important Group 1. We introduced him at a fee of 12,500, and while he was always popular, he was covering workman-like mares. He was covering the sort of middle of the range bunch of mares. But the thing that he seems to transmit, and certainly transmitted with his early books, that's helped him through the sort of the lull that can inevitably happen in the 3rd and 4th book when a stallion isn't getting the same quality or numbers, is their longevity. And they seem to have, if you look down his list of runners every day or his results from the previous days, it's amazing how many 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds there are still running. They're very durable horses. And I think when you've got horses in your stable as a trainer, as an owner, and you see horses that are constantly earning you a paycheck, whether at whatever level, you know, obviously we're concentrating mainly on the group races and the big days, but it leaves a good taste in your mouth as an owner and as a trainer. If you're saying, oh, that Munnings in the stable, he's 6 years old now, he's running for me 7 or 8 times a year, and he's consistently winning races, whether they be allowance races or smaller stakes. I think that is very important, not only for a stallion's stats and numbers, but it's very important in keeping him relevant and keeping him popular in owners, buyers and breeders' minds. So I think that stood to him. He's now at the stage where he's receiving, you know, very good support from some of the best breeders in the world. I mean, Leif Aaron from Jubmont called yesterday and asked to reserve 4 spots for Munnings for them. You know, he's receiving mares from the likes of Jubmont, Darley, Stone Street, to name but a few, and obviously internal support here at Coolmore. So he's getting the better mares now and has done for the last 3 or 4 years. The best is definitely yet to come with him. I think he's a horse that will eventually, having done it the hard way, will be standing at 100,000. You know, he's got Jack Christopher this year, who's going to be favoured for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and obviously Kamari earlier in the year, who won the Madison for Wesley Ward in her own backyard here at Keeneland. So he's getting it done at all levels, colts, fillies. And the great thing is, as I said, they're very durable, sound, hard-knocking horses.
No question about it. And Adrian, one more question for me, and that is, you know, everybody wants to breed to, you know, American Pharoah and Uncle Mo and Justify and the top stallions. If somebody came to you and said, Adrian, I have a mare that I want to breed, and I want to, you know, go ahead and race the fall, Is there a stallion that's on your roster, stallions on your roster that maybe are under the radar because they're just not necessarily commercial appeal, but they throw hard knocking horses that you would recommend to a breeder to bring their mare to?
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned him. You mentioned him before. Looking at Lucky is that horse. He's gets runners every single year. I mean, he's had a Breeders' Cup Classic winner. He gets hard knocking, good, strong racehorses every single year. Diamond Dupes, is there a better embodiment of what our stallion is all about? The Diamond Dupes, who's now, I think, 6 years old, keeps running with credit every single time. So yes, looking at Lucky is the one for me. He doesn't really get the true sales horse, but if you're looking to breed a racehorse for 15,000, I think he's the best value we've got.
Last question for me. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Justify. You guys have the unique distinction of standing 2 Triple Crown winners. But I always think it's interesting because there's such a gap between sometimes when the horse stops running and when the horses go through the sales ring. Obviously, I think that there's a major demand for Justify yearlings. His yearlings sold very well throughout the summer and at Keeneland September. But what has been your sense of the demand since he retired through now? Has it kept up with what you expected? Has it dipped? Has it raised? What's your feeling about that?
Support has been, in his first book, he covered just over 250 mares, which is a huge amount. And given the quality that he covered I think it was 68 or 69 Group 1 winners or producers in his first book. That has continued in his second and third books, even though he covered slightly less. He still covered good books in terms of numbers in second and third crop. But he, he's got all the ingredients. He was a wonderful racehorse, albeit over a short period of time, but I think he took the country by storm in that 114-day spell or whatever it was. The quality of mares he's bred, the way they looked, the way they sold, he is a horse that's got international appeal, as was witnessed in Keeneland September, especially considering 3 of his highest priced yearlings were bought by Japanese interests. So I think he's a horse that will have a certain amount of exposure in Europe as well. We're taking a lot of our better ones over to Europe to go to Ballydoyle, so we'll see how they adapt to European training and European surfaces. So again, like American Pharaoh, he'll get the benefit of an international audience, and that I think is very important nowadays. If you've got all the buyers who come to Keeneland and come to Facey Tipton, Saratoga, and they want to see international horses, and these horses, given their profile and given the breeders that bred to them, and given where they are going to run, they've got every chance now of becoming truly international sires.
Yeah, and you guys do a great job. I don't know whether you had a lot to do with it. We appreciate Coolmore coming aboard as a sponsor on the show. We're very honored to have you guys, and we're honored to have you on the show. Adrian Wallace, thank you so much for the time.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Adrian.
Great job, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by the Green Group, an accounting, tax, consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. As this week's Green Group Guest of the Week, Adrian Wallace will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation. Learn more at greenco.com. We'll be right back after this message from the Green Group.
Why do the most successful owners, breeders, and horsemen select the Green Group as their tax advisor? We simply save them money and know how to make them more successful. Over the past 40 years, founder Leonard Green has owned and bred some of the best racehorses in the history of the sport. His in-depth, hands-on industry knowledge, combined with cutting-edge tax-saving strategies, has produced positive results for his clientele and has made the Green Group the top-rated accounting and tax firm in the business. For a confidential and complimentary consultation, contact us at 732-634-5100 or visit our website at www.greenco.com. The Green Group, proven strategies to save you taxes.
Owning potential future superstars like Flightline is attainable with a racing partnership with West Point Thoroughbreds. Partnerships enable you to spread your ownership across several horses for less than it costs to own one horse alone. This increases your racetrack action and your chances for a big horse. Learn more about why West Point Thoroughbreds is the gold standard in racing partnerships at westpointtv.com. West Point had another exciting maiden winner over the weekend with Derecho Dandy, who broke his maiden at Santa Anita on Sunday for trainer John Sadler. And this past Friday, West Point added another horse to their list of stakes winners with Morning Twilight, who won the Oklahoma Classics Lassie Stakes. And the 2-year-old filly is trained by Steve Asmussen, owned in partnership with Edwin Barker and Titletown Racing Stables. And the Retired Racehorse Project's Thoroughbred Makeover was held this past weekend and featured 4 former West Point horses, including Still Dreaming, who was a winner a few years ago for Graham Motion as a half-brother to Nyquist. He won the show hunter division of the show. That's great. It's great to see the West Point horses being repurposed and rehomed and retrained. Obviously, fully support that. And I know that's something that Terry Finley's passionate about. But there was also some racing-related results with John Green, always the most important part of any segment.
Yeah, Joe, we were fortunate enough to have a couple of good horses with our friends at West Point Thoroughbred. 2 weeks ago, we had SWAT Analysis, who made his return to the racetrack, a triumphant win, easy hand ride win in an A other than. And now he's being pointed to the Ontario Derby at the end of the month, which is a grade 3 up at Woodbine. And then even more recently and more importantly, Turn Aside, that we own with West Point Thoroughbreds, ran a really solid second in the grade 2 in the Arctic, and only lost to Millionaire Avies Flatter. So, again, our partnership with West Point Thoroughbred continuing to blossom and come up with great results. Thanks again to trainer Mark Cassie. And Turned Aside right now, we're entertaining some thoughts about maybe sending him to California if he can get into the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. We're still working on that. We're still not sure he's going to get in, but he ran a 98 buyer, which is really outstanding and good enough to compete in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, it's other than Golden Pal, I think it's a pretty wide open field. So I support you guys in that endeavor. I know you're all waiting for my approval on whether or not you can send that horse to California. Don't worry. You have my blessing to send Turned Aside to California. But yeah, and also I can't wait to see all those high priced yearlings on the track next year, because they're going to be loaded. And, obviously pretty much swept the toppers at Keeneland in September. So that's going to be very interesting to see how those horses pan out. And also Flightline, who I mentioned at the top, still pointing to the Malibu Stakes. We're very excited about that. And we said this last week and the week before, that this was kind of the last 2 weekends that you could possibly run a horse in the prep races and then come over for the Breeders' Cup. So I thought this would be a good week to kind of run down the fields and how they're shaping up and who we can expect to see, who's going to get bet hard. And so I'm just going through some of the early betting here. For obviously we have the Future Stars Friday on Friday with all the juvenile races. And then we have the rest of the program on Saturday. On Friday, it looks like we're going to have 2 pretty solid favorites in the main races with Echo Zulu and Jack Christopher. Obviously, both were very, very impressive in their first couple of races. Echo Zulu, I think, has been like a little bit less tested than Jack Christopher, just because I think the 2-year-old fillies have not been quite where the 2-year-old males are at this point. She's currently a 2-1 early favorite on most books. Juju's Map, who won the Darley Alcibiades very impressively, is 4-1. Looking at the juvenile fillies turf, there's nobody right now shorter than 5-1. We talked to Adrian Wallace about Tenebrism, who's by Caravaggio, currently 5-1 co-favorite. So that's going to be a very interesting betting race. But the juvenile, I think, is going to be a terrific race. And the top 3 right now in the wagering are Jack Christopher, Corniche, and Major General. Major General, I thought I was going to get a big price on him. Seems like everyone else has sniffed him out too. He's currently 5-1 in the early wagering. I was hoping to get double digits on him. But just moving on to Saturday, it looks like we're going to have a couple of really big favorites. And that's kind of going to be the determining factor in whether or not you're able to make money on Breeders' Cup Saturday. Because we got Gamine, who's definitely going to be odds on. She's going to be 4-5, 3-5. That got John's attention, got him to stop looking at the Keeneland November catalog. And then we got Jackie's Warrior in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. He's probably not going to be odds on, but he's going to be pretty short. Baid, who won over the weekend, is coming over for the Breeders' Cup Mile. Probably going to be a pretty short price along with Space Blues. I think the Euros are going to be probably the top 3 or 4 choices in the mile. The Distaff, Latruska is going to be a very short price. It's interesting to see how they bet between her and Malathot. I think those 2 are going to take the vast majority of the play. It'll be interesting to see how much of a gap there is between those 2. It looks like Tarnawa is going to come to the turf and going to be very tough to beat in there. But you also have Mishriff. The Dyer is probably going to come over. We'll see about Love or maybe a couple of the O'Brien horses. But also in the dirt mile, I kind of think Life is Good is going to be a short price. And just going through it, Golden Pal in the Turf Sprint. The Classic, I think that Knicks Go is probably going to be like 8-5, 2-1, but that's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out in the wagering. That's my main takeaway so far, is that I think Saturday it looks like there's going to be a lot of favorites, and it's going to be on the bettor to figure out which ones they think are vulnerable. That's going to make the difference in terms of whether or not you're able to make money on that card. Let's just get some general thoughts from you guys on what you're looking forward to and some of the horses you're looking forward to seeing at the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, Joe, among these big favorites, I'm not sure any of them are vulnerable. I mean, stranger things have happened, but can you see Latruska getting beat? I can't. Can you see Jackie's Warrior getting beat? I can. Tarno, this interesting website, thanks for sending it by oddschecker.com. In the turf, I'm surprised Tarno was such a big favorite, 7-4, just a hair under 2-1. And also to show what they think of the American horses, the top three favorites in there are all European, and domestic spending considered our top horse for the Breeders' Cup Turf is 5-1. Then, this goes to show you, we've talked about this a lot. Look at how deep the Classic is. Now, one thing we didn't mention, like Maxfield now is going to pass, which I thought was a little bit of an odd choice to do that, to go for the Clark. But they've got Knicks Go at 3-1, Essential Quality at 9-2. And look at the kind of horses you're getting for these bigger prices. Medina Spirit at 8-1, Hot Rod Charlie at 10-1, Max Player at 10-1, and Art Collector at 12-1. So you're getting horses like Max Player and Art Collector and Hot Rod Charlie coming off great, Medina Spirit as well, coming off grade 1 wins with really good, strong form on the year, going off at 8, 10, 12-1 in there. I'm looking forward to the juvenile very, very much. Jack Christopher versus Corniche. You mentioned Major General. I'm really focused in on those two. Jack Christopher is 5-2 in the line. Corniche is 4-1. I'm surprised there's that much of a gap between them. Also, these prices seem a little generous. I don't think you're getting 3-1 on Knicks Go in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I don't think you're getting 5-2 on Jack Christopher in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile through the pari-mutuel pools. But you never know. I think the East Coast, West Coast showdown of Jack Christopher and Corniche is going to be fascinating, and that's going to be a really good race. And of course, let's get back to the horse of the year discussion. If Latruska can win the distaff, she puts herself very much in the equation. I think Knicks Go and Essential Quality would both have to lose the Classic, and she'd have to win the distaff for her to be horse of the year. But, should be, she's going to be one of the highlights as well. And she's just a terrific, terrific mare had a terrific year.
Yeah, and you guys have gone over all the major important races, so I don't want to be redundant. The only thing that I want to add on to Bill, what you were saying before is, I was surprised that Maxfield is skipping the richest race in the United States to go into the Clark, and it's not to denigate or say anything negative towards the Clark, because it is a grade 1. But it was just a surprise to me as to, why you would skip that opportunity to run in the Clark. My guess is they want to have one more G1 next to the horse's name and then possibly retire him. And on a winning note, which I kind of understand that strategy. But man, you don't want to see all the powerhouses in the big race, out in California this year. The other announcement that surprised me a little bit was the fact that Knicks Go, the powers that be owning Knicks Go sold the breeding rights to TaylorMade, or at least the horse is going to stand at TaylorMade, once his career is over. And it was interesting to me, as to how that deal kind of came down and ultimately, have the horse stand at TaylorMade. So obviously they have tremendous breeding interest in the Breeders' Cup Classic. But it is a deep field, even with a couple of these defections. It is still a really, really deep field, and things will continue to develop over the next couple of weeks. Because like we always say, they're not machines, they're animals and they're athletes, and horses may get temps or foot problems or a myriad of other things that can come up between now and then. But it is shaping up to be as solid of a classic group as I can remember in the past few years.
Yeah. And, just touching on the Maxfield thing, it's a great field. It's honestly a terrific, one of the best classic fields I've seen in a while. But we've talked about this, that it looks like there's a lot of speed in there, and you would have thought that it would maybe set up for a horse like Maxfield. So it is interesting that they're going to take the lesser route, so to speak, in the Clark, and like you said, probably try to get another grade 1 win under his belt. But I thought he had a decent chance in there, especially if the pace got hot. You know, I would have been willing to take a shot. Obviously, not my horse. But one of the things I like is that we do have a lot at stake at the Breeders' Cup. You don't want everything to be settled. Obviously, some divisions are settled. Etruska is going to be champion, older dirt mare. Jackie's Warrior is probably going to be champion sprinter. I don't see who else you could really vote for at this point. But horses. Champion male. MALE sprinter. Horse of the year is still up for grabs. Champion turf female. It's going to be interesting to see if Warlike Goddess wins the Filly and Mare turf, but then Tarnow wins the Breeders' Cup turf. I've seen horses come over and just run that one big race and win champion. So that'll be interesting. And there's a lot still to be determined. 2-year-old male, 2-year-old filly as well. So that's one of the things I like about it is when the Breeders' Cup is really that kind of showdown to determine the year-end champions. It makes it feel like a different sport. It makes it feel like the playoffs, in a team sport. So that's exciting. And the Classic is I think going to be one of the best ones we've seen in a long time. Plenty of intrigue. We'll touch on it more once the pre-entries come out and the fields start to take closer shape. We just wanted to run down what we got going on right now in terms of who's getting bet early. And it does look like Gamine is probably going to be the shortest price in the entire Breeders' Cup. And it ain't just going to be because of John Green's plunge. I think it's the public. It's the public can't get enough of Gamine, and there's really nobody else in that race except for maybe Bella Sophia and CC. Can't think of anybody else.
By the way, when he's the top stallion in racing about 6-7 years from now, stay on her good side. Can we breed stay on her good side to Gamine? How about that?
Only if Gamine is good enough.
Threw her right under the bus for the 2023 Queen's Plate winner.
Man, start up the Winnebago. We're up there. Hey, we're working on your Canadian accent.
Let's get Skip to come up with a name for that foal in 2027. Start working on it, Skip. Joining a West Point Thoroughbreds partnership can vault you into the world of instant camaraderie among people surrounding high-class horses and stakes action for a fraction of the cost of trying to do it on your own. Learn more at westpointtb.com. We'll be right back after this message from West Point Thoroughbreds.
All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Legacy Bloodstock. If you think that 50 years combined experience in the horse business could benefit your program, give Tommy or Wendy a call. They personally advise on each horse as if they were their own. Some Legacy news this week. Forced Ranking was a Legacy grad from the 2020 Keeneland September sale. Broke his maiden on Sunday at Belmont for Chad Brown and Claravich Stables. Obviously very high-powered connections. $140,000 son of Mastery was the 148th winner of 201 races this year alone by Legacy sales graduates. That's a pretty good stat. You can check out their next consignment at the next week's Facing Tipton Kentucky October yearling sale with a roster of over 50 yearlings, including sons and daughters of first crop sires like Good Magic, Mendelssohn, who we mentioned before, and Accelerate Plus top sires like Into Mischief, American Pharoah, Practical Joke, Coolmore Power there as well. And you can also find them next month at the Facing Tipton and Keeneland November breeding stock sales. A very busy time of the year for Tommy and Wendy and everybody at Legacy. So congratulations on the continued success and good luck to getting through this gauntlet in the sales season. And then you guys deserve a break, just like all of us. This broke yesterday, and it's not a huge story, I guess, that Simon Callahan got suspended for 15 days and fined $15,000 or $5,000, for treating unraced 3-year-old colt. Federal Bureau. It was a $1.2 million Keeneland September buy with 3 shockwave therapy treatments within 30 days prior to a workout. And this is according to a Santa Anita Board of Stewards ruling from October 17th. The suspension will run from November 14th to November 28th. Now, I don't know how big of a deal this is, and that's why I want to bring John in on this. It is worth noting that, shockwave therapy is allowed. It's just, the certain amount of time to a race that it's allowed within. And that time has gotten shorter in the last couple of years with Santa Anita trying to crack down on, horses, potentially unsaddled horses being on the track. I obviously don't know the specifics of this horse or what his issues may be, but equine shockwave therapy is a treatment widely used on the backstretch for soft tissue, musculoskeletal, and bone problems such as sore shins. I wonder what John thinks, because, it does carry with it concerns, as I'm quoting from Dan's story, over its analgesic properties, which can last up to 3 days post-treatment. And like I said, CHRB extended that post-treatment window for breezing from 10 days to 30. John, have you used shockwave therapy on your horses? How much of a benefit do you think it has? How big of a deal is it that Simon Callahan got popped for something like this?
Yeah, Joe, not only have I used it on our horses, but I've also, spoken to other human athletes that swear by it and think that it's a great procedure. It's not invasive. It's not anything like you're injecting or anything like that. Basically, you're standing on a pad for all intents and purposes. And there are, they call it shock waving, but in reality, it's just pressure waves that are going through the tissue and trying to stimulate blood flow and new growth of a blood supply to an injured area. So the science of it, if you buy into the science, it makes sense as far as, is it going to help any athlete, whether it's equine or human? Its primary use was for humans for like kidney stones, to remove kidney stones or to reduce the size of kidney stones so they can be expelled from the body. And what they found is that with the additional blood flow in the area, it did start to have a healing process. So to answer your question, yes, we've used it on our horses. However, like any therapeutic product, whether it's shockwave or an actual injectable or some kind of medication or supplement, you have to play within the rules. And if the rules say for that racing jurisdiction that outside of this window before a horse performs on the racetrack, whether it's a breeze or a race, it is not acceptable, then that's what you have to do. Now, you can say, well, was it extenuating circumstances where they were using the machine, and because of, bad inclement, weather coming up, they moved the horse's breeze up and maybe it got, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is as to why it was done. All I know is that if the racing jurisdiction tells you that you can't do it 72 hours to performance, then you can't do it 72 hours to performance. And that's why, there was a fine and subsequent penalties, accordingly. What it shows me, though, is yet another California trainer that is, embroiled in an issue, and whether it's through bad management or absentee management or just a bad decision. We don't know what the answer is, but it's yet another California trainer that's embroiled in another issue.
Yeah. And, that's kind of one of the themes of the year, that we've seen a lot of California top trainers having either drug violations or something like this. But I appreciate John's insight, because I'm not a doctor. I don't know. It sounds bad. Shockwave therapy sounds like very, I don't know. It just sounds like you're doing something to a horse to get it on the track that maybe it should not be on the track, but it sounds like that's not the case. And it's something that's a little bit more, commonplace. And this is just something where the window before the breeze was violated. So thanks to John for that insight. But yeah, California racing has gotten a lot of its top guys in the news recently, kind of for reasons you don't want to be. Obviously, I don't think this is in particular is that big of a deal, but that's going to come from, we talked about this last week, California and the CHRB becoming more stringent about these types of things, and changing the way business has been done in California for a really long time. So while there are some short-term negative headlines for California having so many top trainers be on the wrong side of the law in this case, I think overall it's a good thing, and they are trying to do the best they can to protect the horses, which hasn't always been the case in America in general, and I'm not just singling out California here. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on hopefully the rest of these guys, they take heed from this decision and from this penalty, and everybody make sure to do everything within the right time frame. We'll be right back after this message from Legacy Bloodstock.
Being a small family business, I guess we're part of a dying breed. We're really grateful for the people that entrust us. We know it's a huge responsibility.
We're always with your horse every step of the way. When it comes to being at the sales ground, showing your horses, we are with your horse.
Just driving up and down the road every day, there's not a time that I don't look out and feel a responsibility to the sport, the animal, the people that come to invest in the game. I want to see as many people enjoy this sport as they possibly can, because we do have the most beautiful sport in the world.
All right, so that's going to do it for this week's edition of the TDN Writers Room, presented by Keeneland. A reminder that the Keeneland Fall Meet goes through October 30th. You can get those bonuses through Keeneland Select by going to KeenelandSelect.com. I want to thank Bill Finley, John Green, our Green Group guest of the week, Adrian Wallace, our producer, Patty Wolf, our associate producer, Katie Petruniak, our editors, Anthony LaRocca, Aaliyah LaRocca, and Nathan Wilkinson. Thank you also to Bill Farish for stopping by. Congratulations to Skip Anderson. Once again, stay on her good side. Stay on her good side. I almost screwed it up already. Is the name of the colt that'll be on track next year. And who knows, maybe he'll clash with the Philly Writers Room at some point. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you for sending in all those names. We'll do something like that, I think, in the future. But we won't use Sue's email this time. I think she was expecting like 5 or 10 names. She got hundreds of names to her email, so that was kind of funny. But yeah, thanks to all the participation, and thank you to everyone for watching and listening. We'll see you next week, I think, back in the studio.